Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Oblong Online event for the book launch of Don't Tell a Soul, which is a spooky new novel by Kirsten Miller. And tonight she is in conversation with Erin Craig. My name is Leif Cantrell, and I am Oblong's Digital and Events Manager, and I will be your tech host this evening. So before we begin, I just want to go over a couple housekeeping notes. The first one is that we have a Buy the Book button down in the bottom center of the screen, and that handy button will take you to find copies on our website. And you'll see right kind of below that button, there is an Ask a Question button. And at any point during the event, you are welcome to ask a question of both of our authors or either one. And in the last 10 to 15 minutes, we will go over all of the questions and go through as many of them as we can and get those answers for you. And I know someone already asked a question, so thank you so much. We're looking forward to answering those. So it's my pleasure now to introduce tonight's authors. Kirsten Miller lives and writes in New York City. She is the New York Times bestselling author of The Eternal Ones and How to Lead a Life of Crime, as well as the acclaimed Kiki Strike books. She is also the co-author of the Nightmare series and the Last Reality series with Jason Segel. We are here tonight to celebrate the launch of her latest novel, Don't Tell a Soul, which has been likened to a modern-day Rebecca, and which Publisher Weekly's called a feminist twist on gothic horror that thrills and chills while exploring the myriad ways that society tries to silence problematic women. Renee Craig is the New York Times bestselling author of House of Salt and Sorrows, and her new book, Small Favors, will be out in July. After getting her BFA in theater design and production from the University of Michigan, she stage managed tragic operas filled with hunchbacks, seances, and murderous clowns, and then decided she wanted to write books that were just as spooky. Erin makes her home in West Michigan with her husband and daughter. Welcome tonight, Kirsten and Erin. I will leave it to you two now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello.
Well, no, it's just the two of us.
So happy book birthday. I'm so excited that Don't Tell a Soul is out in the world and terrifying readers everywhere as we speak. I absolutely loved reading it. Oh my goodness. It was such a fun ride.
And I am a huge fan of yours. That's why when I was asked who is there somebody that you would like to talk to over at the launch of your book, I was like, I just finished this really great book and I would like to talk to Renee Craig. So I loved House of Salt and Sorrows. It was great. It was incredibly atmospheric and detailed and whatever. We'll talk about the dresses some other time. I loved the attention that you paid to all the dresses.
Oh, I had so much fun with those. My Pinterest boards are just out of control. So how did I loved everything about this book. The mural is the thing that stays with me. And I have a 4-year-old daughter, and we recently moved to Michigan, and I was kind of want to paint a really cool mural, and then I read your book. I'm like, no, this is a terrible idea. Things will happen. No, I was just, how did you what sparked the idea for Don't Tell a Soul?
Well, I mean, it's not one thing, right? I feel like if I had to describe my writing process, it's very much like one of those birds that goes around plucking little pieces of string and little sparkly things and little twigs, and then weaves them all into this bizarre creation that's made out of all of these little things that it saw and it liked. So, I mean, there are a million little things that I saw and I liked and I picked up over the years that ended up getting kind of woven into the story. Like the wallpaper, for example. I'm a huge fan, and I wish I was super wealthy because I would totally hire somebody to create a mural in my house. But just that idea of having this incredibly detailed painting like they did in the 19th century all around you, something that you can always find something new in. I loved that idea. And of course, when you're always finding something new, you never know exactly what that something is going to be, which is a part of the story, right?
So as they said that it's been compared to a modern day Rebecca, what drew you into the dark and spooky? I know a lot of your other books are nightmares and ghosts and goblins and all sorts of crazy spookities. What draws you to that?
I'm really dark and weird. I think that's the truth, and there are a lot of people probably watching this who are nodding along. Dark and weird, I really am. Yeah, I mean, I've always, even as a little kid, I loved ghost stories. I loved, it was funny because when I was a kid, you're a bit younger than I am, but when I was a kid, we didn't have the great YA literature that we did. There were great books, but we certainly didn't have the treasure trove that we have now.
Not remotely.
So yeah, when I was, I don't know, 12, 13, maybe even a little bit younger, like I just kind of skipped over young people's literature and went straight to Stephen King.
Yeah.
And so I spent my youth, and I mean youth, like reading every single, all the craziest ghost stories, horror novels, whatever. And it's just always been my thing. I love it. And there are aspects of the Gothic in everything that I've written. And it's just the kind of sensibility that I prefer. But it's funny because people keep referring to this as a sort of a modern day Rebecca, which actually Rebecca is kind of a semi-modern day Jane Eyre, which is really more of Jane Eyre was more. I would say Jane Eyre was more of an inspiration than Rebecca, even though Rebecca is one of my favorite books, and I love Daphne du Maurier. Like I just love her, love her, love her. If I could write like one person, I would write like her. But Jane Eyre, the big house and the owner who's not quite right, and the secrets like in the attic, and the sort of the dark history, and the women who are either mad or being held captive, depending on how you want to see it.
Yeah.
That was really, that was kind of the inspiration. I wanted to do a play on that sort of old Gothic story. And so that's what Don't Tell a Soul became. And also I've always been fascinated by, Bertha Rochester, I hope everybody's read Jane Eyre. I don't feel like spoiled Jane Eyre. But the mad woman and the mad woman in the attic. And was she really everything that they said she was, or was there something more to her story that we just didn't know?
I always wish the Brontes, I wish she had picked that up again and given us a prequel or a sequel or something.
Oh, you should read. Have you ever read The Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Reese?
It's on my to-be read list, and I definitely need to bump it up because, it needs to be read.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, it's taking the character of Mr. Rochester's previous wife and sort of telling her story and how she got to England and how she ended up in the attic.
Yeah.
Jumping out of a window and setting a house on fire. But it's great.
As one does.
Yeah, as one does.
When you mentioned the Stephen King at a young age, I remember because it was the same thing. There wasn't a lot of the YA books. I think I went from scary stories to tell in the dark to a really fluffy Babysitter's Club period. And then I was well, I want something scary. And I remember I don't remember which Stephen King it was, but I remember going to the library and being this looks like something I want. And then I was oh no, we're not checking that out. No, you're not bringing that home. And I was so sad because it sounded amazing. I think it was Shining. I'm pretty sure it was The Shining. And I was oh, this is everything. Yeah. Why wouldn't you let me read this? And she's this is terrible. You're way too young for this. No. And when we moved, when I moved up into the junior high, we shared a library with the high school. And so I could go at lunch and check out. My mom would never know because it was at school. And I would sneak it in and read under the covers. And I realized she was totally right. And I really should not have been reading it at that age. But, Salem's Lot traumatized me.
I really, see, The Shining was the one that did me in. I still sleep with the lights on, and The Shining has a lot to. Although as an adult, when you go back and you read it, you realize it's a really sad book.
So
really
sad. Yeah, I reread it just before Dr. Sleep came out to refamiliarize myself with it, and oh my gosh, the things you see as a kid versus an adult. Oh, so sad.
Yeah, and I like the child abuse side of it, like that. Yeah, I have a hard time with stuff like that.
very much so. Oh. So Gothic themes do run deep in Don't Tell a Soul. Would you consider your favorite Gothic trope out of all of them? Because there's so many delicious ones.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm playing with. So this is like, this is book. There are going to be other sort of books that sort of play with the ghost story theme. And I love them all. I love them, in this one you have the sort of the rundown house, that's been partially destroyed, the manor, the ancient manor that, is now inhabited by one, poor soul who's left over, and I love the sort of the women in white, right? So there are always a million women in white. It's just, as if like that's what makes a really good ghost is like, the pure, the sweet, the perfect girl dressed in a beautiful white dress. That's the one we're all going to really miss and feel terrible about. And they're just like, there's so many of them in this book that I just was kind of playing with because, there's so much there. I mean, this is a form that was popular, 150, 60 years ago, and it's still, I think, as powerful as it is, today as it was then, because it's sort of playing with all of these ideas of like, your personal history and what can you leave behind and what is always going to follow you. And, these things that are very, I think, just human, they're going to be as relevant in 100 years as they are now.
Oh, absolutely. I love, and we've got both of our books, I think, have a lot of Gothic stuff in them. With House of Salt and Sorrows, I love exploring the whole, is she mad? Is she seeing things? Is it all in her head? Maybe she is haunted. I remember reading, I think it was Vera when I was a kid, and like the woman who's being gaslit and really does think she's crazy, and it's her husband playing all the strings because, he wants her dowry or the house or something, that she's got, but he doesn't. And so he has to make her think that she's going crazy. Yeah. I love that. That's one of my favorite tropes. And like, is the ghost real? Is it not? Is it all, who's creating all of the stuff?
Exactly.
One thing to explore.
It's funny because as I was reading your book, it occurred to me that even though the settings could not be more different, right? I mean, it's just, I'm sort of, the Hudson Valley in New York, and you're, this sort of kind of magical island realm, but, strong female characters, the whole question of sort of, of gaslighting women, and, this question of what's real and what's not, and who do you trust and who don't you trust. And the sort of the girl detective, side of it too. That's sort of like that girl who is hell bent on finding out what the answers are and sort of figuring out what happened to people that she loves and get the answers. So it's sort of like, it's funny because they are very similar in that respect in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and yeah, solving the mystery of all of these dead girls. There's so many dead girls everywhere.
Yeah. Well, that's that's the other thing. Dead girls are a big part of literature in general. It's kind of interesting that.
And yeah, especially with Gothic, I mean, like all of Poe's heroines, they're all beautiful and dead, and they're beautiful because they're dead, and so much stuff to unpack.
We're so much more interesting when we're dead.
So, with all of these ghosts and everything, have you ever had a ghostly encounter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big believer. I mean, people are going to think I'm insane, but I'm actually a huge believer in ghosts. I have experienced many ghostly things, but I will tell you my favorite story, which is about me. Well, I'm in the story, but my daughter. This was, I don't know, my daughter would have been about 5 or 6, so about 6 years ago, my sister moved into a new house in Atlanta, and it was like this creepy little house. It's just like, it had a bad vibe. The second I saw it, I was like, there's something wrong with this house. I was sitting downstairs with my sister, talking to her, and my daughter, my sister had just gotten this new little kitten who was, wandering around the house, and my daughter is obsessed with cats and like chased this little kitten up into a bedroom on the second floor. And she's up there and she's, 5 or 6. So at some point I'm like, okay, well, I should go and find my child who's disappeared with this kitten. Yeah. And I get up to this bedroom and she's sitting on the bottom bunk of a bunk bed, and she's facing a wall of closets that are empty because my sister has just moved in. Mm-hmm. And, I kneel down in front of her to, pet the kitten that she's holding. And she's just she kind of just peeks up and looks over my shoulder, and she goes, "Mommy, who's that?" What? And I sort of slowly turned around and looked, and the closet doors were open. It was one of those the sliding doors, and I don't see anybody. And I turn back around and I'm like, I don't see anybody there. Who do you see? She looks over my shoulder again. She goes, "I see the teacher and the little boy." And I said, "The teacher and the little boy?" And she goes, "Yeah, they're here together." I was like, "Okay." And I said, well, this little boy, what is he like? And she, "Well, he's about my age, and his name is Yarrow or something like that." She goes, "I don't know, it's something like that." And I was like, okay. I was like, "Well, what about the teacher?" I was like, "What does she look like?" Daughter looks over my shoulder again. She goes, "Kind of like a monster."
No.
And so, yeah, I was like, "You know what? Let's take the kitten downstairs and see your aunt." And so we went down there. And I was so freaked out, and I didn't really tell my sister at first because this is her brand new house.
Yeah.
It's like, there's a weird ghost in your house. But later on, when we got back to New York, her dad asked her the one question I hadn't thought to ask. He was like, "Do you mind if I ask her about this?" I was like, "No, see if she tells you what she told me." And she goes through the whole thing, and she's only 5 or whatever. She goes through the whole story, and he goes, "Well, how did you know who they were? How did you, And she sort of tapped her. She goes, "They thought it, and I heard it."
Oh my goodness!
Oh yeah. So that's. I have other ghost stories, but that one's definitely the creepiest. And I went and did all the research. I tried to find out if there was something weird about this house, but it was like a little house from the 1950s. It wasn't, it wasn't like some ancient manor where.
Oh, I wonder. Yeah. I love ghost stories. My favorite one. I've never I haven't seen a ghost with the shadow, all of that and everything, but I was a stage manager before I had my daughter, and so I would always work.
So stage manager for what specifically?
I did I lots of plays, operas mostly.
That's so cool.
It was I loved it. It was so great.
That's why you're so good with the dresses.
Designed those. But I was working in Memphis, and we were at the Orpheum Theater. We were doing a production of Il Trovatore. And so there's all this huge chorus. It's the big anvil chorus. Da, 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 da. And so all these guys had these huge armor pieces that they were wearing. And I was the assistant stage manager at the time. And so I'm there on weird hours, and when the crew would go on break, we would be able to run upstairs to the dressing rooms and stuff and get some work done while everybody was out. And we had the chorus coming in later that day, so I had to go up to the guys' dressing room and put their names across all of the mirrors and everything. And it's this really, really long, narrow room. And there's mirrors on either side of the room as you come in. And then going down the center of the room, there's like the big dressing rack. And so all of these like pieces of armor, which is all just really plastic, but huge metal, heavy armor looking things, are all hung up in a really nice row because the costume people have been there and they've done their job really nicely. And I was hanging up their names. And all of a sudden, I kept like a movement because I'm staring at myself in the mirror, and all of a sudden, going down all of the stuff, it's like someone just took their hand across all of this armor, and it starts swaying back and forth. And it is super hot. It's Memphis in like April. It's already in like the 90s. There's zero air conditioning upstairs at the Orpheum because it was built in, I don't remember when, but the air conditioning was out. We were sweating horribly. So it's not an air draft. There's nothing like that. And I just remember like staring in the mirror, watching this happen. It's like, what is that? Like, there's got to be some reasonable explanation for it because like they're plastic, but they're still heavy. Like they're full body suits. Hold on, baby. And so I was like, this is weird. And I was like, okay, I'll figure this out later. I've got work to do. And then as I was leaving the room, I always had a ton of pencils like stuck in my hair because I was always having to write notes and stuff. Like I felt something push one of the pencils out and it landed on the floor behind me. And when I looked, all of the costumes were standing still. And they'd been like total, like the little, wave going and everything. And I was just like, I'm leaving. This is not good. And so I grabbed the pencil and I went running downstairs, and like all of the big burly crew guys are coming back from their lunch break and everything. And I was the only one that had been upstairs. They were all on lunch and they're all coming back and they're like, are you okay? You look really weird. And I was like, I don't know. The weirdest thing just happened up in the costume room up on the boys' side. And I told them, like, oh, that's Mary. Don't worry about her. And I'm sorry, what? And they said, there's a little girl that haunts the Orpheum, and her name is Mary. There's like apparently 11 ghosts in the building, but she's like the big, everyone knows about Mary. And she's this little girl who died back in the 1920s. There's like a trolley system that runs outside the theater. Oh. She had gone to go see like some vaudeville performance and ran out into the street afterwards and was struck by a trolley, and they brought her back into the theater and she died. And so she's still there, like playing with costumes and backstage and messing with poor little assistant stage managers. There's lunch breaks. But they had like, there's like comic strips that have been made about her and all sorts of stuff that were like they showed me like there's like a little Mary shrine backstage, and I was like, oh, this is great. I totally want to like be hanging out here in this dark, scary, creepy place for the rest of the week. And then I was back a couple of years later. We were doing a production of Treemonisha, and I was on stage light walking, and they saw like out at the tech table, the lighting designer and the stage manager were out there, and they saw like this weird flash in one of the boxes. And so the lighting designer took her camera out and she caught like this like image. It's just like a white profile of what looks like a very little girl just chilling in the box watching us do light walking. And it was like, oh, that's what Mary looks like. It was just this like creepy little white line, but you could kind of see like a little face, and it was so it was
that's sweet though. Like I mean,
she gets to see a lot of good shows.
It's scary.
I love ghost stories. They're so much fun.
Yeah, it's funny how many people, I always think in one of my books, it was I think one of the Key Straight books, the narrator says, if you want to know whether somebody's interesting or not, don't ask them what they do for a living or where they come from or anything else like that. She was like, ask them if they've seen a ghost, and like, if they, say no, you can just move on and talk to the next person. And if they say yes, you're talking to somebody who has at least one really, really good story.
Oh, yeah. I love that. I'm gonna have to use that in the next party whenever parties happen again.
No, seriously. I mean, it's funny because people always, at least when I ask it, although people know that I'm a bit weird, people always take the question very seriously. Like, and you'll be surprised who has a story and who doesn't. Like, I know people who are basically, they look like a cross between, Morticia Adams and, Elvira, Queen of the, dark. They don't have a ghost story. Like, they've never seen anything like, but, the person who, is the last person on earth that you think would have a really great ghost story is the one who's going to have the best one of all. Yeah.
They've never told and they're dying to tell.
Yeah, exactly. And now they found somebody who will listen.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. I want to hear more of yours later. So with all of the really fun stuff that goes on in all of your books, what is the most like eyebrow raising Google search that you've ever had to do while drafting a book?
Like this is like I kill people every day. That's what I do. I've just not that long ago finished a big project that's for adults, believe it or not. And there's a lot of botany in it for very nefarious purposes. So, I've done a lot of research on what plants will kill you, what, where to find poisonous mushrooms and how much you cook with your steak and potatoes. Like, it's just like, yeah, I've done a lot of research on the on the ways to kill people with stuff growing around your house. Like, seriously, if anybody I know ever dies, like, I'm going to be the first person that they look at. They're like, oh. I've seen 14 searches in one day for nightshade. Like,
when I was getting ready for House of Salt and Sorrows to come out, I was like, I knew I wanted to have like a cute little catchphrase when I would, do the autographs and stuff. So my first one was "Be careful who you dance with,"
nice.
and so I was like, "Oh, this is a lot of words. Like I should practice my cursive." And so I kept writing out "Be careful who you dance with. Be careful who you dance with." And like who you dance with was fine, but like be careful because there's so many loops. Like I kept messing it up, and I wanted to be able to just like muscle memory through. So I kept writing out "Be careful, be careful, be careful." Marker, and it was like looked like some crazy person journal, and like I had left it out on the counter, and like my daughter had a diaper change that needed to happen or something, and so I'd wandered off and forgotten about it, and my husband came home and he just saw this journal of "Be careful," because he's like, so Erin, how's your day go? Are you what's going on?
This is the point where you say all work and no play makes Erin a dull girl. And then you take him back to the labyrinth outside your house.
Yes. I think
you killed some people in some pretty impressive ways. And
oh my goodness, yes. Well, I think in Small Favors, so it's a loose retelling on Rumpelstiltskin.
Nice.
So I had to do. I knew I wanted to like take the tale and set it in America. And so I didn't want to do like an imp or like a goblin or an elf or anything like that for Rumpelstiltskin. So I did a bunch of research on like American cryptids. And so for a while I was like, I think it can be like Mothman, but I was like, that's not quite right. And I knew like Bigfoot seemed too comical. And so I settled up on the California Dark Watchers, but like going through and like figuring out ways for them to kill people, like how like these cryptids would actually like destroy a human body there was a lot of really interesting.
What did you land on? What cryptids did you land on?
They're called the Dark Watchers.
I don't know about this, and I literally know about every cryptid on Earth. So tell me about it. What are the Dark Watchers?
always so excited to find them. So John Steinbeck actually claims to have seen one. He wrote about it in some short story, and everyone was like, "Ha, that's so funny." And then his son was like, "No, he really did see this. Like this whole thing happened. Like that's in the short story. Like it's true." There are these figures that stand on, it's kind of like that stretch of Highway 1, like around Baja. They just stand up on the cliffs, and it's these really tall figures. They say they're probably anywhere from like 7 to 8 feet tall. And they wear like a long dark cloak, and they always have like some sort of really wide brimmed hat. And they just stand there and they watch. And so people will be driving and they just see these like human figures, but obviously much bigger than humans should be, in these dark cloaks watching. And so that was kind of my whole take on the like what drives all of the horrible events of the town, is that these people, things have come to watch different scenarios play out. And so they'll grant you whatever favor you want, whatever your darkest wish is, for a small favor, but those favors have consequences for them to then watch play out. And so when I was going through everything, I thought, like, these are horrible, awful, evil things. Like, they would totally, like, pollute the land around them. So all these really awful things happen at the start of the book. And so there was lots of animal mutations and awful things.
I'm so there for that.
But yeah, some of the stuff I had to look up is like, how would like a really elongated claw like sever human flesh? And there was some,
like a kangaroo claw.
Oh yeah, very like Velociraptor like.
Yeah.
It's like how I watched far too many Jurassic Park movies.
That's awesome. I'm totally there for that book, Erin. I'm gonna pre-order it after we get off.
Yes, thank you.
Like you were, what was it? You were tweeting about Lauren Coleman. What was it?
Oh yes. Yeah, the Cryptid Museum.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've always loved like any kind of, cryptid things. Nessie was always my favorite when I was a kid. And I knew I was going to be the person that unlocked the secret of Loch Ness. I'd never been to Scotland, but I was going to be the one. And so when my daughter and I finally got our library cards since we moved, the library here is phenomenal. I was so excited, but they had like this huge section on like monsters and all of these things for Tiny Craig, and she was like, she doesn't care. Like she's like, oh, PJ Masks, princess, whatever, Angelina.
Yeah.
But yes, let's do this. So we were going through this like cryptid book, and I was like, oh, it's Lauren Coleman right there on the cover. How exciting! So
anybody knows? So Lauren Coleman is like. He's like the king of the cryptid researchers. Like he has the Bigfoot Museum. He's so serious. He takes it very seriously. It's not like
very scientific.
It's not a joke. It's not something that he does to sell merch. Like he's very, very serious about it. And it's not just it's not just Bigfoot and Dark Watchers. It's also coelacanths and Tasmanian tigers and all of these things that were considered extinct or lost or non-existent for so long, and then one day we woke up and found them.
I
really Bigfoot on Sunday. Like I totally am a huge believer in Bigfoot.
Have you read Danielle Trussoni's The Ancestor?
No.
You need to. It's so good. It's like Italian Alps. It's Gothic manor, like isolated up in the Italian Alps, and then Bigfoot-esque, Yeti-esque things afoot. No pun intended.
Yeah, I'm there. So I'll tell you, I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina, and like way back, there's a part of, first of all, Deliverance was, the city scenes were filmed in my hometown. Like that's how remote it is. Yeah.
Wow.
So there are parts like, there's a town there, there's a college, but if you go up in the mountains, around in the same county. Like there are places there, like for example, there's a place called Little Canada, which is called Little Canada because you might as well go to Canada because it takes you so long to get there. And it's like way up in the middle of like in the mountains, like way up there. And I had a friend who lived up there, and his parents were like, there were a lot of people who were, you know, super outdoorsy types who would come, and you know, they enjoyed roughing it in the mountains. And he was one of these. He, you know, came from one of these families, so they weren't from there, but they, you know, they lived in the mountains, way back in the mountains. And he was driving home one night, and there was a truck in front of him, and you know, it's the lonesome mountain road. There's no other traffic. Like they hadn't even passed another car on the road, and then suddenly the guy ahead of him slams on his brakes, and you know, this guy's far enough behind him so he doesn't hit him, but he, you know, comes to a pretty fast halt himself, and he just sits there. The guy is not moving, and the car isn't moving, and this is late at night, and the car just is not moving. And after about 10 minutes, like he thought maybe he hit a deer or something, and after a few minutes, he got out of his car to see if the guy was all right, you know, and he said the car hadn't hit anything. There was no deer, there was no bear, there was nothing. But the guy was an older guy, mountain guy, sitting in the front, just like shaking. And he said it finally like got the guy to roll down the window and talk to him. And he was like, well, what happened? Why'd you slam on your brakes? And the guy was like, I swear I just saw the devil running across in front of me. And it was what they call in that part of the mountains, the gray man. So there's
what about that?
Yeah, it's sort of like it's like a kind of Bigfoot-esque creature, not big, but and covered in gray hair. And you know, I mean, after that, it's like people, you know, people say this is impossible, but like where I grew up, the woods are nowhere near as vast as they are in the Pacific Northwest or Canada or other parts of the country. And let me tell you, where I grew up, you could get lost and never, ever, ever be found if you didn't want to be found.
Yeah.
So the idea that there might be something living back in, I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Totally possible.
Oh my goodness. We need to like tag team a book on cryptids. That would be so much fun.
Well, I would totally. I'm absolutely fascinated by them. And I think it's ridiculous, like that we pretend like we know everything, like we found everything, like everything's been discovered. I think there's so much that we still don't know.
Oh, it's amazing. Like I always love when they like they do kind of like the end of year roundups and like these are all the new like animals we discovered this year. And like sometimes they're like big animals. Like they went unhidden, you know, hidden for all of these years. And like they're obviously a thing. Like of course there's other things out there that we don't know about. How much of the ocean hasn't been like charted, and we can't fathom the whole depths of everything. Like there's so much stuff out there that we have no idea.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Like what if these things are smart? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's like, you know, we didn't find gorillas until gorillas were a cryptid until very, very recently. It'll shock you. You'd have to look up the date, but like it's shocking how late, you know, humankind discovered gorillas. But like, what if they were really smart? What if they didn't want to be found?
Mm-hmm. Especially like all of these like the humanoid figures, like you would assume if they've got like all of the rest of the characteristics are an offshoot of, you know, evolutionary chains or whatever, like they have intelligence, like on par with us or better or whatever, like if they've been hidden for that long. Oh yeah, there's so much stuff out in the world that like.
By the way, everybody thinks we're completely batty.
How many people do we have left in the chat?
Like everybody's gone. They're like, all right, guys, Bigfoot. Yeah, now.
Nessie, what are your takes?
I wish Nessie was. I suspect there might have been something there once, but
yeah. Well, and I started. This is so off topic on everything. I started following. There's a basking shark group on Twitter that I started watching. And I'm like, and when I was a kid, I remember reading like no one would like mistake a shark for Nessie. That's stupid. And now I'm watching, I'm like, oh my gosh, they totally like. I would totally think that's like some sort of sea monster thing. Like they're so weird and like and huge. Yeah. Oh yeah. So do you want to play a quick lightning round before we open it up to questions?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so here we go. Stephen King or Shirley Jackson? Huh?
I like them both, but Shirley Jackson. Like
I love it. Yeah, same thing. I'm gonna go Stephen King there just because like there's more to read.
yeah.
A little more prolific. What show do you comfort watch after you've watched something too scary?
I like there's nothing too scary for me. Like I don't like gore. Like I don't like I mean it's not like I'm opposed to it. I just don't like I find it boring. It's like really like you're gonna scare me by lots of blood and guts. That's boring. Like yeah, I don't I will sleep. I do often sleep with the lights. By often I mean every night. But
I need the room totally dark. Like even my husband, like when he like charges his little like his ear beats or whatever, like in that glow, it drives me nuts.
okay, so really, oh, you need it totally dark.
Yeah,
I need total quiet.
Everything.
I need total quiet, but lights on. Yeah.
Yeah, I need like total dark, but I need the fan on so there's like some sort of hum to background noise or something. But
remind me to send you. Oh, I have the best like white noise website. Oh, you can do like rain on a tent. You can do like primeval jungle. Like it's awesome. Like it's so beautiful. Irish Coast.
Oh, I love that. I have to watch like so. I'm the same way. Like gore, I don't like. It's just it's and it never looks right. So it's always just like, am I watching this? But like if I get like into a really like deep psychological, creepy, twisty, that thing in the corners totally started moving behind the main character. I have to watch like The Office or Parks and Rec, like something totally not at all related, and then I'm fine. But if I go to bed immediately after, or like try to go and read a scary book, it gets so much worse.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I do that too. I don't know. Maybe I do a palate cleanser.
All right, so you have to spend the night in one fictional haunted location. Where are you going?
Fictional?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I would like to stay somewhere where there's a mystery to be solved. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to think like Scooby-Doo place. No, but I would love to. I mean, my dream would be to sort of, you go and you stay like in Jane Eyre in that, Mr. Rochester's house and Jane Eyre, and you hear the thumping and you think there's a ghost, and then you find out that it's not a ghost. And you get to save somebody and be a hero. That's what I would like to do.
I would really love to visit Rose Red. That it was a Stephen King mini series, and then he like made like some little novella of the thing. But it was based off the Winchester Mystery House, and it was like it builds all the stuff, and then like the rooms keep switching around, and in the thing, Julian Sands is like running around and doing awesome stuff. So that would be fun.
Yeah, have you been to that house?
And it's like very like long, creepy hallways that just like end in a wall, or like a staircase that goes like nowhere, just up to a ceiling. I think that would be something to explore.
Have you been to the Winchester house?
I haven't. When quarantine, like all the lockdown stuff started, they opened up like a 40-minute tour that you could take for free, which was so fascinating. And they like would get really close to all the like little architectural details and stuff. And I would love to go out there like once all this is over.
Yeah.
That would be very fun.
I bet on your next book tour you'll end up somewhere out there and you can go.
Have you been to it?
I have. It was pretty cool. I was on a book tour, and I went with my publicist, and we got there late, so we only had like 20 minutes, and sort of, rushing through the Winchester Mystery Houses, you don't appreciate it. You don't get to feel the spirits.
Oh yeah. Oh. All right. You are suddenly stuck in a teen slasher film. Are you surviving to the credits, or do you get picked off quickly?
I will tell you this, and everybody I know will agree, and I'm absolutely certain of this. I am definitely the last girl. Like, I'm definitely the last girl. Like, I am so prepared at all times. It's crazy. Like, yeah.
I feel like I would be like really like gung ho to survive, and then like I totally would be the one that trips on a tree root and like gets.
Okay, well, maybe that. Like, I'll get to the very end. Like, whatever. I'll kill the assailant and then die in some horribly comic way. Yeah.
Yes. I took my daughter hiking the other day, and I was like, yes, we're going to do this. It's going to be an awesome thing. And like totally tripped on a tree root, like not even out of.
On Earth. It's really sad.
I feel like the know-how wise I could get through it, but like whether the body cooperates.
Yeah. No, exactly. Okay, I'm with you. Maybe if we teamed up, we could survive.
Excellent. And then last question, what books are currently on your nightstand?
Oh, well, so my house burned down. Well, yeah, that's not funny, but it's true. Yeah, my house burned down 2 weeks ago.
Sorry. Oh.
Yeah, it's fine. Like, whatever. These are the things that you have to get through in life. But a friend of mine, a lovely friend of mine, gave me a big pile of books, and which is wonderful because you end up reading stuff you would never pick out on your own. So I'm reading a lovely book, which is really horrible. It's great, beautifully written, sort of horribly. I don't even know how to describe it. It's both awful and exhilarating at the same time. But it's called My Year of Rest and Relaxation.
Uh-huh.
It's very dark.
Oh, no.
Very dark. But I'm enjoying it very much, and I would never have picked it up on my own. So
yeah.
Silver lining.
Yeah. I just started Lincoln Child, Douglas Preston's newest one in the Nora Kelly series. I love their books. Like, it's the one kind of series that I really stick with. And then I'm also reading an arc of Helen Ellis's new like memoir short story stuff. She has just the best voice. It's really witty and sharp. I read her I don't remember titles well. What is it? American Housewife. And I was so surprised how dark and funny it is. And like it's like these like very like New York socialites talking about like letting this young girl onto their HOA board and like sucking her life force out so they don't have to get Botox. Like, it's so good. That sounds terrible description of it, but the short stories are just.
That reminds me. At some point, some other time, I'll tell you the story because I had an idea for. It's more of a short story than a book, but like something about modern day vampires, which has something to do with what you were talking about. So.
I know.
Yeah.
I have to say, I have chills from head to toe. That was so good. Oh my goodness.
What got you? Was it the cryptids?
It was your first story about your daughter, really. Just started the chills and kept it going.
She's extremely creepy for a 12-year-old.
Oh, I love that. So we have lots of questions. You did not lose anyone at all. I know you said I wasn't worried, but people are clearly enthralled. Do you want to get started?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So this first question, I believe, is for you, Kirsten. It's what research did you do for the book?
What research did I do for this book? Well, the book is set here, and by here I mean in the Hudson Valley, and I got to know this area a bit, and I'm absolutely fascinated by it. In fact, I already have an idea for another book that I want to set here, but I have like 4 books I need to write before I get to that one. But I just love the old, this place, and if anybody's watching who isn't from here, you should visit because we have all of these old mansions all along the river. And it's like the remnants of another world, another society, like another civilization. And it's just the most amazing thing. And all of these places, for the most part, are public. Like, you can go and wander the grounds of these old Gilded Age manors and mansions. And so I've always loved that idea, sort of this old, almost the ruins of this old world, and then you plop like a modern young person right down in the middle of it. And so that was the sort of part of it that I needed to kind of get to know a bit better. As for the ghosts, as you could tell, I already know a lot about ghosts. So that was the extent of my research.
Do you know about the school for girls around here? That is
Where is that? That is the most that ruin is like amazing.
It is. It's gorgeous.
Where is that?
I'm trying to remember. It's like something I think it must be up by Poughkeepsie.
Right.
Yeah, it's somewhere up in that area.
I know what we're talking about. Yes, I agree. I've driven past that before. It's crazy.
Yeah. I've seen pictures, but I've never actually been in person, and I would really love to go and take a closer look.
I will email you. I know who will know exactly where it is.
Okay, yeah, definitely let me know, because I will be there as soon as it stops snowing outside.
Yeah, talk about atmosphere. So our next question is, how long did it take you to write this book? How many steps did it take to like get to the final piece?
I'll let Erin answer this too, because it's very, very different for everybody.
Absolutely.
This book took me longer than almost any other book because it was sort of written at a kind of transitional point where I really, to be frank, did not know what I wanted to write about anymore. I'd spent a long time partnering with somebody, and that was lovely. And it was time for me to do some stuff on my own, and I kind of lost the plot a bit, and I wasn't sure what my focus was going to be, what I was going to write about, because writing is really, really hard. That's what people don't tell you. It is really hard. It does not matter if like you have, people think it's about taking dictation from God or something, and it's not. It's really, really hard. And so you're gonna do what you have to write about something that you really want to write about. And then my editor, who's probably watching, Krista, really helped push me more she took what was kind of a pretty ordinary ghost story in a lot of respects and really helped sort of dial up the feminist side of the story. And it was at that point that I was like, okay, this is what I started doing with my first books, and this is what gets me excited, and and this is what I want to do going forward. So it took me a long time to write this, just simply because I needed to come to that conclusion, and I needed to find my purpose with the help of Krista, who's without whom I would be lost. So Erin, what did you?
Mine for House of Salt and Sorrows, that was the quickest book I've ever written. Before that I've got one book that was shelved, and it took about 10 years to do from start to finish. Obviously I wasn't writing the entire time. I was off stage managing and doing all sorts of things, but with House, I got the first draft done in about 3 months, which I've never been able to replicate. I wish I could. I don't know what I did to channel it. I needed to find whatever magic elixir it was. But I started out it was a Camp Nano Remo project in July, and I set my thing for like 30,000 words. And then I was like, this is a workable pace. Like I can do this like every day. And so once the camp had finished, I just kept going on at that pace. And I had a working draft, I think by like September of that year.
That's amazing.
And it was so fast. Yeah, it was lovely. And then I got my agent shortly after that. And I think we did about 3 rounds of edits before we decided to take it out on sub. And then after it was bought, I think I did there was like 2 really big rounds of edits.
You make it sound so fun.
And then with Small Favors, it was a lot of like, because we sold it on option, so it had like I think 13 chapters written, and so like we ended up revising that, and then it was like, oh wait, we want to revise that again. Oh wait, we're going to take it in this direction, and so it was a lot of start and stop, and that took about. I think I started really working on it in 2 Februarys ago, and then I think it was like last April or May, I finally was like finished with it. But it was a lot of start and stop, and like it was a lot of like learning how to write on deadline, and like with like trying to promote another book that was coming out, and it was a whole process of learning. And then the one I'm working on right now is actually coming out fairly quickly. So I'm hoping maybe I can channel some house magic again and get that done.
It's different. It's different for every book. You know,
very much. And like, how much do you need to research? How much do you need to, what do you need to learn how to tell the story the way that it needs to be told?
Yeah.
Sure.
So our next question is for both of you, and I really like this one. It's, what kind of ghost would you like to haunt you?
Well, I just watched Bridgerton. I don't know. I mean, I would, like I said, I would like to have a ghost that leads me to something. I love a mystery. I don't want to just be haunted and have them show up and hang out. Like I want them to lead me to a hidden cache of something, or lead me to a skeleton buried in the garden, or I want it to be attached to some sort of mystery that I can solve, and whatever, talk about it at cocktail parties. Really popular.
I can definitively say, like, nothing that has ever come out of Mike Flanagan's head, like Bly Manor, like nothing like that. If I'm going to be really flippant, probably like the ghost of Alan Rickman, because like who wouldn't want that lovely voice around for all eternity? I'm going to go with Alan Rickman.
He would make a really good ghost, I think.
He could like read you bedtime stories. It'd be really fun.
Yeah, those are great answers. Okay, so next, well, then someone just said that they were loving your ghost stories. And next is actually the opposite of that, which is, what kind of ghost and or cryptid would you never want to encounter in real life?
Mike Flanagan, anything he writes.
Let me think, because that's a really good question. Here's the scenario. Okay, it doesn't really matter what cryptid it is, but I do not want to be driving down a empty road in the middle of nowhere and have something walk out in front of my car and stop me. Like that's great. Like that, I don't want that. Like in a car with something really, really, scary or unusual standing right in front of me. That's and especially if it looks like a clown.
I am absolutely terrified. It's not really, like, I guess it could be like outer space cryptid, but like the gray aliens, I am terrified of those. I watched like way too many of like the original Unsolved Mysteries as a kid, and there was one episode where like the grays came and like zapped somebody or something, and they turned into like this like tapioca looking type sludge, and I don't know what stuck with me all through my childhood, but I've never been able to eat tapioca ever since then. And the night that aired, my mom made like cheeseburgers with like white cheddar for some reason, which we never would have had. But like we had white cheddar that night. It was all bubbly and disgusting. And I knew like somehow the grays were coming to get me that night. Anything with grays, like no.
I actually had that's the one nightmare that I can remember from childhood is aliens coming to get me.
No, there's like. But, like, I can't imagine a more horrible, like, you're safe asleep in bed, and you just come down the walls, because they don't care about walls.
That's
like,
right.
They're gonna do what they do, and no, that's the whole so cool. I would take Mike Flanagan's ghost over the Greys any day.
So our next question is, I know we've talked about a lot of different books. I was like taking notes about all these ones I need to read, but someone wants to know if you could recommend a really good horror novel.
So many.
You go for it, Erin.
One of my favorites of last year was Alexis Henderson's The Year of the Witching. It's horror, but it's It's horror, yeah. It's a girl who lives in the town of Bethel, and it's like this kind of village-esque M. Night Shyamalan feel to it. And there's witches in the forest, and there's like they bring them this like rain of different plagues and awfulness and blood. The water turns to blood, and like I remember there were some moments where I was like genuinely like disgusted and creeped out in like the best way. But it was definitely I definitely had a nightmare because of that book, which is very rarely like books usually don't give me nightmares. But that one I remember dreaming about the blood, and I was like I woke up and I was very happy that it was, you know, I was almost done with it and I could firmly put it away, but it's fantastic.
I will read the one novel that and I don't know if it was an adult or a young person who asked the question, because the book I'm talking about is really like save it until you're 40, okay? But it's called Under the Skin. Do you remember like this book? It's hold on, I'll tell you who wrote it. This book messed me up, and I have never ever stopped reading a book ever in my entire life, except for this book. And it is the most horrifying thing I have ever encountered. Yeah, it's about, and there's a movie out about it with Scarlett Johansson, but apparently the movie is junk. I never watched that. But if you really do want a truly, truly disturbing book, this is what is his name? Oh, Farber. Yeah. Sorry, Michael Faber. He's a Scottish writer. It is messed up. It's like, and somebody actually, I don't answer a lot of like the little quiz memes on Twitter, but somebody wrote, asked, what was the most disturbing book you've ever read, or the book that you had to stop reading? And I wrote Under the Skin, and so many people were like, yes. Yeah, and I read the Amityville Horror when I was 7 years old and did not have a problem with it at all. So that's how bad this one is.
Oh my goodness. I've seen the thing. I think it's on like Amazon or Netflix or something, the movie of it. And I'm always like, oh, and then I never hit it, which I guess I shouldn't.
Yeah, and it's not, and what's brilliant about it is it's not gory. I mean, it's not about gross murder, blood and guts sort of stuff. That's not what's shocking and horrifying at all. It really messes with your head. So, my present to you.
High praise, but also I think I might stay away from that one. So the last question of this evening is, where do you find the things that inspire you and all of us? Any websites, journals, sources, recommendations?
I would say go for lots of walks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can read, and I mean it's like I have I read whatever you can. I mean, the New York Times is going to give you lots of ideas if you look for the right stuff. Although if you can find that aisle in your library with all of the monster books, that's always a good place to spend a lot of time. Or 11. But yeah, just take lots of walks. Like if you go out and walk around and you it's just, there's something about that activity that gets your brain working, and you're just picking up all this sorts of stuff. You may not even know that you can use it, but it's like I said, it's like picking up these little sparkly things that you can eventually sort of build something very cool out of.
Oh yeah. I always find whenever I get to a point where I don't know how to continue on with the scene, and I'm a plotter, I have all of the chapter outlines and everything. I know where I'm going, but if I don't know how to get there, going for a walk, immediately the second you're 3 blocks away from your house, something just loosens itself up, and it's oh, well, this needs to happen for this to that to connect to here and all of that. And then I love going for walks. And finding ideas, like I always end up finding them from like just really random stuff. Like I'll see something in the newspaper or something that'll like take you down a wormhole. I'm really bad about going down like Wikipedia wormholes and stuff. It's like I love finding little things that fascinate me, and it's like, how can I fit this into something? There was an article I read years ago about this ballroom in England, and it was such a fascinating article for me. I've researched everything I could about it, and now it's showing up in the plot of my next piece that I'm working on right now. I'll finally figured out how to get it into a story, and it was just like one of those like little weird Atlas Obscura things that started the whole thing. And
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
yeah.
No, I need to know what is up with this ballroom.
I didn't know what the name of it is. I just it's sort of like a green sort of
Yeah, it's though I won't say anything more, but it's the Whitley Park Underwater Ballroom.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So it's this gorgeous, and like all these like urban explorers, because it's obviously private property, and that's been like rightfully so at this point. But people have gone and taken pictures, and so there's so much like fun, fascinating things to like research with it, and it didn't do anything for a while, but it was always in the back of my head, and now it's this major plot point for what I'm working on right now, and so. Like I like finding things that interest me, whether it goes into like what like House of Salt and Sorrows became, or what Small Favors was. Like interesting tidbits will find their way into whatever it is, as long as you're enjoying what you're finding.
Yeah,
awesome. Well, thank you both so much. I've learned so many things. I have so many browsers open of like Little Mary, Orpheum Theater that I'm excited to delve into later. Thank you to everyone out there. You've been an awesome audience. Thank you for all the amazing questions. If you want signed copies of Don't Tell a Soul or House of Salt and Sorrows, you can get them at oblongbooks.com. Now's your chance to hit that shiny buy the book button before it's gone. Thank you so much, Kirsten and Erin. You've been absolutely amazing. Do you have any parting words for us?
No, I just want to thank Erin so much. She's literally she's just like a ray of sunshine. Really is. I'm dark and weird and disturbing at times, but like Erin, she's just the nicest person on the planet.
Oh my gosh, I'm so much fun with you. Like you're not barking, so I was like I'm the sunshine goth.
Well, you too.
So much. Like this was I as soon as I saw Kirsten's book, I was like, oh my gosh, I need this in my life, and I'm so happy that we were able to do this because what a treat.
Yeah, it's definitely been a treat of an evening, and I think you two balance each other out perfectly. I would listen to a podcast that you hosted any day.
Oh, Erin.
Well, while I eagerly await that, if you enjoyed tonight's event, our next event will be this Thursday with Mary Beth Hughes and Deborah Jo Immergut for her new collection of short stories, The Ocean House. So I hope you tuned into this evening, that you will join us on Thursday night as well. Again, thank you both so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.